What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about Citizen Sleeper 1 and 2. It's going to be a big long video talking about both Citizen Sleeper games. I was going to split these videos up, but then I decided why not just combine them into one video and we'll just have the most ultimate Citizen Sleeper video. So the first half of the video is going to be my Citizen Sleeper first time playing video, and then the second half of the video will be my review of Citizen Sleeper 2. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So before we get into talking about the gameplay and the story and everything like that about Citizen Sleeper, I just wanted to talk about my background with it, and specifically how I started playing it and how I found out about it. So basically, it's January, there's not a whole lot of new games coming out. I'm kind of trying to catch up on the backlog a little bit, and I saw that Citizen Sleeper 2 was coming out on the 31st of January, so I was like, okay, I've heard about it. I've only heard about it. I didn't know anything about gameplay or anything like that, so I saw that the first one was on Game Pass, and I decided to check it out, and it was basically just kind of on a whim. Saw the second game was coming out and decided to get in and give the first game a shot. So what exactly is Citizen Sleeper? It's a tabletop RPG where you'll take the role of a sleeper who is a human whose mind has been digitized and then put into a synthetic robot body, and they are controlled by this corporation. You'll land, or the game will take place on the Eye, which is this space station where you can control how the story goes and what you, as the sleeper, fight for. In terms of the tabletop RPG aspect of it, I'm not really experienced with this genre at all. Maybe Baldur's Gate 3, but I didn't really play a whole lot of Baldur's Gate. So, and I can't think of any other tabletop RPGs off the top of my head that I played. So this is really my first deep dive into the genre, and I can see it being a hit or miss style of RPG, but for me, as my first deep dive into it, it really worked. So now let's dive into the gameplay and talk about what exactly you will be doing in Citizen Sleeper. So since it is a tabletop RPG, a lot of, if not all of, your actions and what you do in the game are based on dice rolls. And the game runs on cycles, which are basically this game's version of days. So when you wake up to start the cycle, depending on your health or depending on your energy, that will determine how many dice you will get on a given cycle. So there's a chance to get 1 to 5 dice a day, and obviously the more dice you get, the more opportunity you will have during that cycle to achieve and accomplish more during that day. So the dice go from 1 to 6 dots, and depending on how many dots you have on the die you're trying to use, it has a chance of either a positive, neutral, or negative outcome. So let's say if you have a 5 dotted die, you will have a 50-50 shot of either a positive outcome or a neutral outcome. If you have a 3 dotted die, you have a 25-50-25 chance. 25 being a positive, 50 being neutral, and the other 25 being negative, and then so on and so forth from there. So the lower the die, the lower the odds of you having a good outcome. Higher the die, probably going to get a positive outcome. Very cool concept. It's probably not the newest one. Like I said, I've not experienced many tabletop RPGs, but the way that it works in this game and how it affects different activities and things you try to do, it works really well. So in using those dice rolls that you have, there's a lot of different things you can do and approaches that you can come up with. But on a daily basis, on your daily cycle, you have to worry about your health and your energy. So you have to go do things like buy food from different vendors depending on who you like more, or maybe it's cheaper at a certain spot, or maybe just depending on what part of the ship you are at. But food is one thing you have to worry about, and also getting stabilizer, which is how the sleeper stays alive and stays running. You have to figure out how to get that as well. And there's a lot of other things you can do on a daily basis as well, like work shifts to make money. There's a lot of different variations and approaches to how you want to go about it, and there's not one right way to do it. It's completely up to the player. As you could probably tell, this is not your typical RPG. There's no crazy combat, there's no leveling up and hitting level 50, or there's no XP. It's all based on your dice rolls, and it's a lot of dialogue. So if you are into reading, or if you can handle a lot of reading, because that's mostly what this game is, it's pretty much like a 50-50 balance of going about your daily life as a sleeper during a cycle on the eye and picking where you want to go and what you want to do, and then the other half is a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of conversations between you and different characters, a lot of setting the background like you would see in a book, where it goes into detail about your environment in a situation. There's no gameplay in terms of combat or anything like that. It's not your typical RPG. It is a whole lot different than anything I've ever played in terms of an RPG, but for me, it works really well with what this game is going for. So even though this game doesn't have crazy combat or your typical RPG systems, there is leveling up and getting upgrade points. Not really leveling up, but you get upgrade points to spend on skills. Very small skill tree in this game. Basically, when you start the game, you have a choice of picking between 3 classes, and whatever class you choose will give you a point boost towards that skill, and also an ability. There are 5 skills in the game, and while you're going around and doing certain things, like maybe one of your options to do is to fix up a ship, that would probably be under the engineer skill category. Or there is endure and a couple other ones I can't remember off the top of my head. There's 5 total skills, and when you pick the class that you choose, you'll have a point boost automatically towards whatever skill. So if you choose the class and it gives you maybe a boost towards engineer, then whenever you go and you do an engineer skill roll, you'll have a +1 boost, basically meaning that, let's say you have a 4 dotted die and you slot that in and it's an engineer skill roll, then it will bump up to a 5 dotted die, and that kind of gives you that choice at the beginning of the game based on which direction you want to go. But as you level up and you complete drives, you will get upgrade points, and then you can spend those on boosting up those skill rolls and also getting 2 sets of abilities per skill. So there's, I think, 10 in total in this game. So once you get to the end of the game, most of your skills are going to have a +2 boost, if not a +3 boost, to their rolls. So you do feel like you are getting quote unquote stronger as a sleeper throughout the game as you progress through the game and progress through these skill trees. So now I want to talk about player freedom, because I think this in Citizen Sleeper is a thing that it does really well in this game, is giving the player choice in what they want to do and how they want to go about it and how they want to live and role play their life as a sleeper on the eye. And first, getting into that, we'll talk about drives, which I briefly mentioned in the last part of the video. Drives are basically your quest. You'll have major drives, which are story focused, main story kind of coming together. There's a lot of different major quests, but then you have the minor quests, which are not ones that you have to do, and those take you on little side stories. You'll meet characters, and it gives you a chance to explore and learn about more of the universe when you do those. But the thing about the drives is that you don't have to do every major drive. You don't have to do every minor drive. You pick and choose which drives you want to do, which is where the player freedom comes into play. You would think in most RPGs or most story-based games that you have to do every major story quest to finish the game and see the full ending, but not in this game. You can pick and choose which direction you want to go, which characters you want to follow and learn more about and spend more time with, and that is what this game does so well. It just gives you options and tells you don't have to do this specific drive, but you can go and choose which path you want to go down. And you just pick a story, the characters that you like, and just go and follow it. And it works really well in this game, giving you that player freedom to do what you want to do and play the game how you want to play it. I've basically seen 2 playthroughs of this game. One time was my own personal playthrough where it took me about 8 hours to see the ending that I got and experience most of the game, but I didn't experience all of the game. It's going to be very hard for you to experience everything this game has to offer in one playthrough because you'll pick and choose which drives to go after, so you won't see some story moments. The second playthrough I saw a buddy of mine play through and play it his way, and he ended up rolling credits in about 4.5 hours and getting a completely different ending and going down a completely different path than what I did, and seeing a whole entire storyline that I did not see in my personal playthrough. So this game, I feel like, has a lot of replayability in terms of, like I said, you will not see everything that the game has to offer in one playthrough. So if you really want to truly experience this game and get into it and see all the different storylines and meet all the characters, it will take you more than one playthrough. But not saying you have to do that, because I played through the game one time. I've looked into a lot of the different outcomes, and one playthrough is just fine to be able to experience what this game is trying to offer. And in my personal opinion, my ending that I got was very satisfying with how I ended up playing the game. Now we'll get into the story and the writing in this game. I kind of give you a premise in the background portion of the video where, like I said, you are a sleeper, a human whose mind has been transformed and put into a synthetic robot body, and you're now controlled by a corporation. But now you're on the run. You are on the run and you escape and get to the Eye, where the game will take place. And from there, not getting into any spoilers, I don't want to talk about any spoilers in this video because I want you to experience this game in whatever way. And it would be hard to talk about spoilers because there's so much to this game that can be seen. So your basic premise is, when you get to the Eye, you just need to find your goal. What is your goal as a sleeper? What do you want to do and accomplish in this story? Do you just want to survive? Because life as a sleeper is not easy. Sleepers are not very well liked, I guess I could say, in this universe. You do meet some characters that, don't really care either way, but life as a sleeper is not easy, and you will be under a lot of stress, and there's a lot of danger involved in that. So maybe your goal is to just survive, but maybe your goal is to try and build a life on the Eye and try to build something sustainable and get to a point where you don't have to look over your shoulder every couple of seconds, every minute. You want to build something that is worthwhile on the Eye. That could be a goal for you. Or do you want to escape? Do you feel like the danger and the stress is too much for you on the Eye, and do you want to try and find a way off of it while maintaining and finding a way off. And there's a lot of different opportunities for that. You will be getting tracked. You will be in definitely some dangerous situations throughout the game. I don't want to get too deep or talk in detail about that. I want you to experience it for yourself. But basically, once you get onto the eye, the story is how do you want to live your life on the eye, and the different directions that you can go, and your goal and what you want to do. In this game, you will meet a very good roster of characters that come from a lot of different backgrounds, have a lot of different personalities, and even just looks to their characters that you will meet. And that is where this game's writing really comes into play with these characters. All of the characters are very well written, and the writing does a good job of backing up these characters' motivations, what they are going for, what they need your help with, how you can help them, and it does a really good job. Another thing I want to talk about, kind of going away from the characters, is just the writing itself. Like I said, there's a lot of dialogue, and at some points the dialogue is setting up the environment, setting up where you are, what is going on. Maybe you'll just be walking through an alleyway in the part of the eye, and the writing and the dialogue make you feel like you are actually doing what the sleeper is doing, like a book, giving you very, very detailed explanations of how the environment is running and what the environment is doing. And the writing does a fantastic job of setting the stage and setting the mood for all the different encounters that you will come across. But getting back to the characters, like I said, lots of different characters, and it will be very hard to see all the characters in one playthrough. I'm pretty sure that I did see all the characters, but I could be wrong. There might be some characters that I missed. And that's where the game gives you that player choice that I talked about earlier, where you go after the characters that you feel are maybe the best well-written characters, or the characters that you like the motivations of the most. And you'll see that there's a wide variety of characters in this game that you will come across and meet. In this game, there's a total of 8 different endings that you can achieve, which is just another part of why this game does such a good job of player freedom. You have 8 different ways to achieve what you might be going for, and what paths to follow, how your story, your sleeper's story, wraps up. And obviously there's a lot of different games that have multiple endings and branching paths, and it's mostly always a good feature because it gives the player the choice, and it also helps with replayability. Like I said, I played through the game, I had my ending, and then I watched my buddy play through the game, and he had a completely different ending than what I had. Now, there are 3 variations, or there's 3 endings with 8 variations. So, even though there are 8 endings, there are basically 3. But at the same time, multiple endings in this game works really, really well. And having those different variations of, maybe I could have done this a different way, how would this have changed that particular ending? So having the 8 different endings in this game help with replayability, and also giving the player the choice of choosing which direction to go in and what ending they might get based on how another person plays it. Not going to sit here and say that every person's playthrough is unique, because it can be. There are a lot of different options for things that a player might see. So you do have a very good opportunity to have a very unique ending, but 3 different endings and 8 variations still works really well in this game. So that'll be it for my first time playing Citizen Sleeper, and those are my thoughts on the game. But now, let's get into my review of Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. If you can handle a lot of reading or enjoy reading in the slightest, I would highly recommend Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. It is a great sequel that does what a sequel should do. Build on what was great about the first game, making the game much larger in scale while also not making the game bloated. It tells a new story that introduces so many great characters while also bringing back some that you may recognize from the first. And the writing is still as fantastic as ever. You'll travel all across the belt while having to manage your ship and crew. You'll take on contracts, which are highly intense parts of the game that you won't want to miss. All of this while maintaining the dice rolling tabletop RPG gameplay I loved from the first game. It is a truly great game and an even better sequel. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, it is my Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector review. If you've already seen the little less than a minute clip before this, then that's how I'm going to be doing these reviews, at least kind of. My idea is that I want to, at the beginning of a review, give you my verdict, let you know if I recommend it, or maybe I'd wait, or just don't recommend it, whatever my verdict is. And then, if you want to, basically just get you right into the meat of the video, instead of waiting all the way until the end to hear what I have to say, I want you to have that information straight up. And then, if you want to hear more of my thoughts about it, then you can continue on into the video and hear what I have to say more in detail and talk about whatever game more. So I've already done an intro in this video for the first half of the video, which was my first time finishing Citizen Sleeper. So this part of the video, if you've already seen that part, is kind of pointless. I would just skip ahead to whatever time stamp I have in front. But if this is the first intro you've heard of this video, welcome to the channel. Today, Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector review. We're going to be going into my thoughts and what I think about the game. So, without further ado, let's dive into my background with Citizen Sleeper. So now we'll dive into my background with Citizen Sleeper. If you've already watched the first half of this video, then you pretty much already heard what I've had to say on my background. It's just going to be the same thing, but with a little bit of extra talking more about Citizen Sleeper 1. So, my background with Citizen Sleeper was that I was looking for something to play. It was January, and nothing was really coming out. No new games were really coming out that I was interested in. So, working on the backlog, trying to clear that out as much as I could. And then I saw that Citizen Sleeper 2 was releasing on the 31st. So, I decided to try to look a little bit more into Citizen Sleeper and what it was. I had heard of the name before, but didn't know anything past that. I didn't know what kind of game it was. I didn't really know what it was going for. So I just decided to, on a whim, dive in and give Citizen Sleeper 1 a shot. And if you listened to the first half of this video, but if you didn't, then I loved Citizen Sleeper 1. I really enjoyed it. I loved everything it was doing, everything it was going for. The player freedom, the tabletop RPG-ness of it was really the first tabletop RPG I've ever played. Really got into that aspect of it, but really just the way that the story is being told, and you have a lot of different ways to go about doing that, a lot of different paths and options to go down to achieve what you want to achieve while role-playing as a sleeper. Really enjoyed the first game, so obviously after the first game, after I rolled credits, I had to dive into the second game and give it a shot. So that is my background on Citizen Sleeper. So the first thing that I want to dive into and talk about is the gameplay, and talk to you about how this game is not your typical RPG. It is a tabletop RPG. Now, me not playing a lot of tabletop RPGs, this is pretty much the first one I played. The only one I can think of to compare it to is Baldur's Gate 3. There's probably a lot more out there. I've just not gotten around to or really played any other tabletop RPGs. So with a tabletop RPG, there is no combat. There are no crazy leveling systems or anything like that. It is all focused on dice rolls. So at a basic understanding, when you play this game, you are given on a daily basis, depending on a multitude of factors, including your energy or health, stuff like that. You'll get 1 to 5 dice a day. And with those dice, you could get 1 to 6 dotted dice. Now, when you get those, the more dots on your die is how it determines what kind of outcome you have. So let's say, for instance, you have a 6 dotted die. That is a 100% guaranteed chance at a positive outcome. But if you go down to a 5 dotted die, then you have a 50-50 chance of either a positive or neutral outcome. If you go down to a 2 dotted die, then you'll get into a 50-50 chance of a neutral or negative outcome. It is all depending on the dice. Everything you do, all the outcomes that you have are dependent on the dice. And a lot of the gameplay is just moving around as your day-to-day life, doing sleeper things like making sure that you have enough food and energy. You have to make sure you are fed, make sure that you have enough money. You're going to go around and work different shifts. Wherever you are, find somewhere to work. It could be working in a kitchen, it could be working on a ship. Your dice rolls are going to determine how much money you get. Maybe if you get a negative outcome, you might end up getting money but also losing energy. A lot of different factors, and it goes into how many different outcomes this game can really throw at you, and it's all dependent on the dice. So your gameplay is going to also go along with your day-to-day sleeper life. So every cycle, which is basically this game's form of days, you have tasks that you need to do. Like I said, you need to make sure that you have enough energy for the day. Make sure you're fed. Also make sure that maybe you need to work a couple of shifts just to get enough money to go and buy other things. But you're also giving so many opportunities and choices of paths to go down. You need to find which characters and which stories interest you the most, which people you want to help out, and then you have that choice of which route do you want to go down. You can spend the time and all the cycles. It took me, I don't remember exactly how many cycles, but it was a good bit to finish the game because I was doing a lot of the side content. I was wanting to go down and help everybody out, find the people that I was interested in and liked talking to and liked building a relationship with, and going and figuring out their story. What are they doing? What is going on with this character? And also, if it sounds like I'm kind of repeating what I said in the Citizen Sleeper 1 part of the video, it's because I am. I want to save the new stuff for a separate section of the video. So I'm just trying to get around to the basics, give you the basic knowledge you need. What is this game about? What are you doing in this game? And then later on in the review, I will talk about what this game does that is different from the first game. So, side tangent out of the way. Yeah, your day-to-day sleeper life is what you are doing in this game, going alongside with the gameplay. With your dice rolls, those determine how your day-to-day life goes as a sleeper. So, like I said, your dice rolls determine how much money you get, or how much energy you lose, or whether or not you are successful in helping out a person with what they are doing, and so many different things that it is kind of crazy to me, as this really being my first tabletop RPG, how much this one system is able to affect so much of the game and how it runs and how it is able to keep moving and not stay still. So now let's talk about how this game is a fantastic sequel and what Citizen Sleeper 2 does to improve on what Citizen Sleeper 1 offered. So how does 2 improve on the first game? There are a lot of new systems that have been brought into this game. You look at it gameplay to gameplay, looking at 1 versus 2, the UI and everything that you're looking at is pretty much the same. I'm actually a big fan of that because it lets you get used to the first game's UI, and then into the second game, you don't have to learn a completely new UI. You are able to take what you learned from the first game, not only in its gameplay and what it's trying to do there, but also in the UI, and you're able to figure out where things are very quickly. But how does it improve on the first game? Well, I think it improves in a lot of different places. One, for me, that we'll talk about in a little bit more in depth, is the story. I think that this game takes a more crew-based approach to that, in terms of there's a lot of characters. You feel like a group, you feel like a crew. In the first game, you felt like it was your story, it was your journey, and how are you going to find your way, what were you going to accomplish. In this game, there is that aspect, but it's a lot more group focused with your characters and your crew. Your crew has goals as one, but also each character has their different sets of goals that you want to go and try to help them accomplish. And I think it improves there very, very well. And it also improves gameplay wise with a lot of new systems. First, you'll notice that when you start playing Citizen Sleeper 2, that you are not just stuck on one station or one place. You're not stuck in one place. You are able to travel to many different stations or planets or whatever you will end up going to. There are many options to be able to go and travel to that you'll find throughout the story. They might have some main story context, or you might just find a place where you can sit, maybe chill there for a couple of cycles, make some money, try to get some info or get some connections. It's really cool, and it takes what the first game did with traveling through the eye, and it expands that and lets you travel from place to place. And what's really cool in this game is a cool little detail is, in this game, which we'll talk about in a second, you have to buy fuel or buy supplies. And each place that you travel to has their own economy. You might be able to eat cheaper at one place rather than the other. Or maybe fuel, instead of being 6 cryo per fuel, it might be 3 cryo per fuel at this particular place. Really cool detail there. Also, you have to now focus on your crew's fuel and supplies, because now there are contracts, which are this game's extended versions of missions almost. They're almost like not main story, go to a place and do this thing and, kind of get some story context based off of that, but you might, at the beginning of the game, like you'll see in some of the gameplay, not really a spoiler, you'll get a option to take this contract to make a good bit of cryo right off the bat. And the contracts are very, very tense missions. You have a very limited amount of time to accomplish these missions, and you have to utilize your die as well as your crew's die. You get to pick which crew you bring along based on maybe who you like more, who you'd rather have there, or look at what skills they have, look at what they specialize in, and bring them because of that. Because you'll need the right people for the job if you want to accomplish the contract, to get paid and get out of there. They get very stressful when you realize you brought the wrong people along and they might not even be able to help at all, and you have to use their die towards a skill that they have 2 negative influence towards. So now their 6 dotted die turn into 4, and that chance goes down like that. The contracts are such a cool part of this game. I'm so glad they introduced them, because it just adds so much tension every time you go and take on a contract. So you'll need fuel to travel from place to place. You'll need supplies on your contracts to be able to fuel, give you energy throughout the cycles once you run out. Then your die start to take damage. That is this game's form of health. Your sleeper's health is no longer a priority in this game. That's not something you have to focus on and worry about. What you have to worry about is the health of your dice. And those can go down depending on if you have enough energy or if your stress level is too high, which is also a new system in this game. And once you run out of dice, or once you run out of health on your die, you'll get rid of it, it's gone, and you'll have to find a way to repair it. So at some point, if you're that deep down into the hole that you've dug yourself in, you might only have 2 dice to work with. And that's not a lot to work with when you're talking about the RNG being involved. So it really creates this tense gameplay system where you want to make sure that none of your dice break, because if they do, it will end very badly for you and you will not be able to do as much as you could do if you had 4 or 5 dice. The stress is something that is just kind of a negative gameplay system in terms of, you know, if you fail this check, then you'll get added stress to you, or your crew during contracts have stress, and if they get fully stressed out, then they are no longer usable on those contracts. So stress is also a very cool system, as well as the new dice health system. And lastly, the glitch dice are also a thing in this game. If you end up losing all your health on a dice, you have 2 options in terms of repairing it. If you go to repair it and you use normal scrap to repair it, then your glitch bar will fill up. When that happens, you have a higher chance of rolling glitch dice, which if you get these give you a 20/80 positive negative chance. You have a very, very low chance of rolling a positive outcome with these glitch dice. Now, over time, you go through cycles, that will end up going down and you will not get glitch dice anymore. But just be aware that these glitch dice are very risky to use. You can obviously, if you get lucky, get that positive outcome, but more than likely you would rather just sit on those dice and not use them, so you don't have that 80% chance of rolling a negative outcome. There's a lot of systems in this game, and it might honestly feel overwhelming at first. It did for me, but once you figure it out, you realize that these systems are here for a good reason, at least in my opinion, and they build on what the first game built, and it works in this game. All of these systems come together and make a fantastic gameplay experience. Let's start talking about the story. I already touched a little bit on the story a little bit earlier, talking about how it is a group-focused story, a crew-focused story, instead of the first game, which was a mostly solo-focused story. Now in the second game, I won't rehash what I already said, but you have a crew, you build up this crew, you'll find crewmates around the Starward belt, and you build relationships with them, and now when they're a part of your crew, that's when the things start to get good, and the story starts to get really good. These relationships, these characters are fantastic. I loved being around them, I loved talking with them, and finding out their backstories, or helping them with whatever they needed on their personal quest. And yeah, I mean, this story is so good. At first, I was a little hesitant about it and the direction it was going, but towards the end, when everything came together and culminated at the ending, I thought it was really well done. It's a different approach than the first game, but it still knocks it out of the park, just like the first game did. This story is also much larger than the first game's story. I said that the first game took me about 8 hours to finish, but it could take you anywhere from about 4 to 5, depending on how you play it and which ending or which direction you went in. This game, I rolled credits at about 12 hours in. So it is a larger story, takes a little bit longer to finish, and that also plays in part with what I said earlier. You are now traveling to different parts of the Starward Belt instead of being stuck on the eye in the first game. You're not stuck on the space station anymore. You're able to travel to different places, so there's a lot more side content to go and mess with and complete because of the widened scope of the game and how much bigger things are, how much more there is to do. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer for you to finish this game. I could be wrong, but it did, at least for me, when I took my time with it. Tried to do as much side content as I could. But 12 hours, very solid runtime. That's like a perfect runtime, I thought. It didn't feel like that. It felt worth it. Everything that I did felt worth it, and the game did not waste my time at all. The story is much larger than the first, but it's still just as good, if not better, in my opinion. The endings in this game, I think, are a little bit different than the first game. In the first game, you had 8 different endings, and they were really 3 main endings with 8 different variations. In this game, as far as I know, it is essentially the same ending, but your crew, who you've gathered up, who you've traveled with this whole time, will change that ending depending on who you have with you at the time. So that's a pretty cool way of doing it. It doesn't exactly copy what the first game did, but it still gives you that slight little variation where a second playthrough would feel different at the ending if maybe you had a different crew from playthrough to playthrough and that ending changed. I thought this ending was very well done. I don't want to say anything more about it. I don't want to spoil it, because just go play it for yourself, because man, it brought the emotions out, and the writing was so good. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm going to stop talking about it, but go play Citizen Sleeper 2. That's all I got to say. Let's get to the outro. That's all I got to say. So that'll be it for my first time finishing Citizen Sleeper 1 and my review of Citizen Sleeper 2 Starward Vector. I hope you guys enjoyed a long discussion about the Citizen Sleeper franchise, and I hope to do more reviews in the future. That is the plan. I have some ideas already in the pipeline of games that are coming out. Also, games that are already out that I want to continue doing this my first time finishing series on, and also some other smaller ideas in terms of just your typical chill weekly video to kind of even things out, kind of break things up a little bit in between the long waits for these videos. So, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys sticking around for the entirety of the video if you've made it here. Stay tuned for more, and I'll talk to you later.